For the inaugural episode of Morley Sound, I'll be interviewing Mr. Jake Ross, Pingry class of 2000 and current Dean of Students. I've been working with him for the past 2 years on the honor board, and today I'll be learning more about his past at Pingry in addition to his current thoughts on the community. Can you start with your name, the year you graduated from Pingry, and then what positions you hold now?
Jake Ross, I graduated in 1996. Currently, I am the Dean of Students in the upper school. Teach junior leadership, teach freshman history, coach varsity ice hockey, and work as a springtime assistant athletic director. And I had 2 years of teaching middle school experience at Pingry prior to this. This is my second year in the Dean of Students job.
That's so many positions. A lot more than I remembered, but
That's all right. I like doing a lot of things, though.
yeah. When did you first come to Pingry as a high schooler?
My freshman year, so I would have been, I guess, 92.
Okay.
Fall 92 or 3. Can't remember.
I think 92.
Right.
And then you came to Pingry as a faculty member 2 years ago?
4 years ago.
4 years ago.
Yeah, so this is my second year in the upper school. 2 years of that, I was teaching 7th grade history in the middle school.
Okay. What was the honor code like when you were in high school?
Honestly, I have no idea. It was there. I don't remember there being an honor board. I remember the class president. I have a vague memory of one student who was an honor board chairperson, I think. I probably should have looked at that more. If, based on the fact that what I do now, working with the honor board, I probably should know that more.
Yeah.
What my own high school experience was. But I was someone who was. It was never something. The honor board was never something that was present for me. The honor code was. I remember like everyone else signing that I did not receive or give an unauthorized aid. I remember Mr. Keating correcting my spelling on received my freshman year. I'm dyslexic, so I kept screwing up the IE. In terms of the presence of the actual kind of ideals of it, I think I probably noticed it more in the athletic arena than in the academic arena. As a student, I did a lot of stuff by myself, so I never really contributed to anything that I thought about. But in the athletic realm, I played soccer, ice hockey, and baseball. I noticed it there more as the coaches demanded us to behave a certain way and hold ourselves accountable to how we presented ourselves. What I noticed there really was some coaches did a really good job, and then I had an ice hockey coach for 2 years. He's no longer here. He did not long. He did not. I would say he did not really value necessarily honorable. But yeah, as a student, I don't have any strong feelings about one way or another.
Were there any are there any stories you want to share about when the honor code really shined in the athletic arena?
So there's a little bit. I coached here as an adjunct coach, I think in 2001 and 2003. Soccer or ice hockey or baseball, some combination of those. I can remember it there, more vividly there, with coaching soccer when we were playing a game, it was a county game, and we scored to go up or win the game. I can't remember what it was, but one of the players on our team grabbed the ball in the net and shoved it into the opposing goalie's chest and said, "Here, you missed this." And I noticed it, but I didn't necessarily say anything about it. I was 21 years old, probably. But the other assistant coach there, Adam Rohde, made a point to address that student athlete directly and very soon after it happened, I was aware. And he did it privately and talked about what the role of leader and what he was representing when he did things like that. Showed about him in school. That's the first time that's the most specific thing I can remember. There's a lot of other things when coaching baseball. Trem would have comments here or there, just kind of reminding you the way Trem does, which is not subtle and quite frank. But it was just kind of in there. It's like you're expected to behave a certain way. You're expected to represent your school. Yeah.
So, going back to your school years, was the honor board separate at the time from the student government, or was it still the student council?
No, I believe it was separate.
It was separate. Okay.
I think that. Yeah, I should probably know this. I think they separated in the '80s.
Okay.
Somewhere around the time when the campuses merged or campus changed. I don't. Here's my feeling is that it's tough because I'm sitting here as a faculty member who oversees the honor board, so I'm very aware of what the honor board does. But I don't remember it being much of a presence in the school in that the group or the actions that they took, that the group took, the honor board took, were present. So, aside from, adjudicating cases, what the honor board does now with, the student faculty speakers, a little bit of the handed lecture, what you did earlier this year with addressing the combined addressing of the different political factions in the school and the election and how to behave properly and honorably, the scruples game that we did last year. It's much more something that you're aware that it's there because the honor board is producing those. That didn't happen. I can say that for certain. The honor board wasn't producing anything that made you think about it consistently. If you ask me how it was chosen or who was on it, I have no freaking clue. I just can't remember. It was 25 years ago.
What did it feel like to sign the honor pledge back then? Do you think it holds a different weight now than it did for when you were a student?
That's a tough question. And my first one was, I spelled it wrong. I don't necessarily remember it being something that was stressed in the way that we discussed what it meant in any classes. Or an advisory. And again, I could be wrong. That was a long time ago. I think some members of the community valued it a great deal and were very adamant. I remember having a conversation with Mr. Lear's sister was my group. I remember talking to her in one of my classes, and I wasn't doing anything wrong, like cheating or anything like that, but I was just being lazy. And just not doing work at one point. And she made comment. We had a conversation. She made a comment to me about how my lack of action said a lot about where I stood and what I valued. Now I don't know if she was speaking directly about the honor code, but it was something that came through. In terms of how it's viewed today, and views today, that's almost impossible to answer because of the stress, the pressure, whether it's comes from external or internal forces, I think is greater than it existed when I was a student. So the need to be honorable sometimes, the need hasn't changed, but balancing the stress has increased. Right, it's become more difficult.
Right.
So I hesitate to answer that question because I can't put myself in the student's shoes today. I can only speak to what the kids have told me. That the kids who have come through an honor board discipline hearing, many times when we're talking about academic issues, it's very much stress related. It's the younger students, underclassmen. It's the first time that they've had significant amounts of work that's due, and they panic and take a shortcut, um, which I think is okay if they're learning from it. Right?
Right.
You need to make a mistake to learn around them. So I think if they make that mistake, they acknowledge what they did, and then they kind of move on from there and grow from it. I think that's fine. I think that should happen. I think the way the honor code works now versus where it did like 8 years ago, where everything was a suspendable offense, it allows for personal growth. And there's some people who don't agree with that. Who
Right.
think that if you violate the honor code, there should be a significant consequence right away. But I don't think it allows people to grow from their mistakes sometimes.
In your high school years, was the honor code then or did the honor code also include the clause that if you don't report honor code offenses, you were part of the problem, so to speak, or that you were also breaking the honor code?
It changed, I think, while I was in school.
Mm-hmm.
So I have two memories of it. I'm not sure when it changed, but it was right when I was either right before I got to school or right when I was in school that it changed. I think. To me, or at the time, it wouldn't have affected me at all. You know, there was a time I was accused of cheating by a teacher, and I remember saying, "Why are you accusing me of cheating?" Because the two people I was accused of cheating on were not as strong students. So I was kind of thinking to myself, "What are you thinking? Why would I even do that?" But I don't ever remember anyone talking about going and reporting things.
Mm-hmm.
So the '90s were a weird time. I think. The '80s and '90s because there was a lot of change.
Right.
And from the all boys network that existed, up and through most of the '70s to the shift in the campuses, the co-ed to the shift in the campuses, and trying to reestablish what the community was. It took time.
Right. Do you think that shifting away from the informant culture that the old honor code may have promoted was a good idea?
Personally, yeah, I do not think it's a good idea to demand people report violations because it does not ask them to be honorable. That forces them to do something. For them to have that moral dilemma that they got to come to by themselves, I think is more important. My old school, we had honor code too, and we reviewed integrity, the school values integrity, and we worked with a guy named Donald McCabe, who's a professor at Rutgers, and he does a lot of work with this. And he actually did research that said, and I don't have it in front of me, but that said that by requiring students to report violations, it actually increased the number of times. It made the honor code less effective because people started acting out of fear. And that, I don't remember how he did the research, but that was it. His finding was. Which I hadn't thought about until we kind of talked about it, but it does make sense, right?
Yeah.
To require someone to do something, you're basically saying if they don't, they're violating the other. So you're setting them up for failure, right?
Right.
I'm not stupid. I know there's cheating that goes on in the school. I know there's plagiarism that goes on in the school. I know there's behavior that goes on in the school right now that I'm not aware of, but it does violate the honor code. But for an honor code to exist, in my opinion, it's the peer pressure that makes it important, not the dean of students standing there looking down at everyone saying, do your job. Peer pressure and the community's values are what enforce what we hope the honor code will do.
What were your experiences like going to college and grad school at Lafayette and Seton Hall? Did they have honor boards or similar committees?
I don't think Lafayette did. I mean, there was a lot of stuff that happened when you were at college. There's a lot of stuff.
Right.
You're in fraternity and or sorority or a dorm or whatever. And if you have, and there's professors who use the same exam year after year after year after year. And that could pass that on. I can remember my fraternity. I can say honestly that I was not involved in this, but the professor changed the exam one year, and it was like, what, no one knew what to do. Because everyone was just used to just being able to study out the exam, and all of a sudden when they found out the exam was different, it was like a state of panic. Everybody took it was a music theory class. When I went to Seton Hall, is a grad program that's different because I had a job at the time. So the accountability of being somewhere every week wasn't there. Actually, it's not a thesis project, but it's designing a research project for what was designing the effectiveness of an honor system in a public versus a private institution. I never went forward with it, but that was my own feeling. And there was a lot of dialogue at the time of, especially in education, because in education major on a master's, where that honor with kids fell. But I can't say it was present. I think as you move on, the expectation, my personal expectation is if you move on in your academic career, you should be aware of what you're doing, either inherently, know right away, like, oh, I'm cheating right now, or just you have the set where you know what you're doing is wrong or not. And more often than not, you should be making, not more often than not, but you should be making the correct choice and accurate honor. It's difficult because honor, when we talk about the honor code, there's really two sections to it. There's the academic piece, which everyone always thinks of.
Right.
But there's the behavioral spirit part, which often goes overlooked. It's your interactions with your peers, and with your classmates or your friends or whoever, being faculty or teachers. We often overlook that. So when you're asking me these questions about my experiences, a lot of times, because they're in school settings, I'm thinking about it in the school setting. In terms of the behavior and spirit part. Pingry was a much different school 25 years ago. It was, more diverse than some of the neighboring schools, but it still wasn't a very diverse school. And the sensitivity of thought and language was not necessarily as present. So that treating others respectfully wasn't always there. It wasn't always as important as it might be today. When I was in college, personally, I just didn't bother talking to people. I had a problem. It wasn't my I got complications with them. If I found I was at issue with someone, I wouldn't continue to be around them. I isolated myself at times. I was okay with that. I played soccer and baseball for a while. So I had a group of people that I could socialize with and lead with. But yeah, whether it was using different substances, whether it was language people used, I became very impatient with them. That makes sense. Rather than have a diary, you said, well, forget you and go somewhere else. So.
What are your thoughts on schools that have honor codes right now? So Duke, UVA, Hamilton, to list out a couple.
Yeah. It's really, like UVA is a zero tolerance.
Right.
Is my understanding. That's tough. I think honor codes are important. I think and promoting honor is tough. It's outstanding, but that's tough. It's just looking at it. You think of the variety of experiences students have when they come to Pingry, whether they're coming from a middle school, or they're coming from what you may call a rigorous middle school experience or one that is not, and then to be thrown into the fire here, your freshman, sophomore year, we allow for a little bit more. We allow for those mistakes. To go to a place where it's zero tolerance, that's tough because if a person is coming, if let's say a person enters an engineering program at UVA just because they really like the idea of engineering, right? But they don't really have the background in engineering, and they struggle and they make mistakes because they just don't know what the hell they're doing. To throw a kid out of school right there at age 18, 17, that seems extreme. But that's the school's feeling. That's fine. There's other schools that have, I get it. I think at the college level, it's also very different too, because I think at the college level, it really should be driven entirely by the students, because at that point, 99% of the campus can vote in an election.
Yeah, that's true.
So we're trusting you to vote for a president, a representative, whether it's Senate or Congress. If you're here at this school, granted, not everyone should serve in those cases, but
Right.
We should trust those people to make the decisions based on what's right for the school. If you have another, I don't know how some of them work, whether it's if they have another board and they make the decision, that's what just stands, or if they make recommendations to the school president or chancellor. I don't, college is different. I didn't experience one. I didn't have one in college, so I don't know how it's emphasized.
Yeah. What was it like, the differences between working in the middle school and the upper school? Academically with students, but also with the honor code and how you interacted with that?
Middle school is a lot more hands-on. I mean, the students themselves are with the faculty member all but an hour a day, probably. That's without class passing. So the freedom that they had was limited. So the mistakes that they could make in terms of social, so it's face-to-face, in the digital world, that's a different ballgame. I can't speak for everyone, but the classes that I taught and the ones I know about were in terms of academic honor code. They were structured where we really limited their ability to do something wrong. Where if it was a research project, they were doing it in class rather than going home and having to try to figure out what research is. And how to teach them something right. But we always talked about citing and how to do that, what things to cite. There's less. I won't say less trust in the students, but they're just given less freedom. So we're here. I just walked down the hall yesterday, and someone walked around with a test saying, "Mr. Ross, I'm in the classroom." My teacher just said, "Go take the test in an empty classroom." So we're just trusting the fact that the students can go find an empty spot and sit down and take the test. That would never happen in school. But I think you let them just walk around like that. It's something that I've talked to Mr. Fulton about, you and I've talked about earlier in the year, about trying to make the honor code presence in the middle school.
Right.
We got really busy, so
Should probably email him.
Yeah, it's fine, and that's what happens. We get into it, and you just can kind of lose sight of longer objectives. But I think it's definitely something that could be done more. They use advisory different, where it's much more structured, so that at times their discussions of ethics or harmful behavior are more present than ours is. With ours in upper school, again, always speaking for myself, some of those conversations just don't happen. They just happen organically. They're not prompts that are meant to be addressed in a line. But there's less responsibility given to students to monitor themselves as an individual or monitor the group.
And then moving into working as an upper school faculty, how was the transition, and what were some of the major changes you noticed?
Well, that's a tough question because I came in upper school faculty as dean of students.
Right.
So all of a sudden there's a totally different.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of just as a teacher,
Yeah.
The expectation was that kids knew more
Mm-hmm.
about what is right and wrong, and sometimes that's not always healthy. I found that you're always reflecting on what you did, so you realize that sometimes you have to go back to readdress something, whether it's proper dialogue or language in a class discussion, to how did it work. Just generally, you walk through the halls here, at any one time, you're going to have students sprawled out on a couch,
Mm-hmm.
sitting on top of the table in the cafeteria. It's nice, so maybe outside playing football. We trust the fact that, and we trust, but we also expect the fact that you're going to get your work done.
Right.
You're going to show up to class on time. If you don't, you understand that there's a consequence. But we expect that and at the point you're a freshman, you're at least going to know those basic things. When you get to the nitty-gritty of what to cite,
Mm-hmm.
or what collaboration means and group work means versus individual work, that depends on a lot on the teacher, because those expectations can vary. I can say you can work with anyone you want,
Mm-hmm.
and that could literally mean anyone you want and as much as you want. But another teacher would say you can work with anyone you want until you start to write your answers.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it just depends.
Yeah.
There's also the older students get, the more as they advance matriculate through the school, more responsibility is given to them.
Mm-hmm.
By the time you are a junior, the expectation is you should know the very basics of what our expectations are in terms of academic integrity. So it's stressed less in the classroom. And the same goes with the way you interact in school.
Mm-hmm.
The dialogue you have with the senior advisor as a student is totally different than what you have with a freshman.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not that you're on the same level, but you can have more conversation that is based on more experience on both sides.
What's it been like working as Dean of Students, and has that changed your perception on Pingry or the Honor Code or anything in particular?
Working as Dean of Students is a job I really like. I like the energy of it. I like the fact that every day is a different day. I like the fact that I view it as obviously I'm the disciplinarian, I view it as that, but
Mm-hmm.
I like to view it as a spot where I can support kids whether or not they want to take something on, or whether they're trying to support them to understand why they're doing this thing.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun to work with students who push boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's challenging in a way. And no offense to you, Sean, but you're someone who has a very clear objective of how you want to approach life.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Not that you're a rule follower, but you have a very set idea of where you're going to go, how you're going to do it,
Mm-hmm.
and a very strong sense of self.
You're not the first person to tell me that.
No, it's fine. And not everyone's there.
Yeah.
Right? Now, you and I have had totally different conversations because of our roles with being honorable, so
Mm-hmm.
that's been incredibly rewarding. The most, to that point, and I think I shared with the group, the experience have had working with our board has been the most rewarding because I've been able to see what the student body is able to produce with just a tiny bit of direction.
Mm-hmm.
Coming from where I was, where they had an honor code, it was very much an administrative tool. The administration used it. We had a student faculty honor board, but it was only called together, I think, once in the 10 years I was there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the fact that we put so much trust in our students, I think, speaks highly of it. And I think I wish it was more present when I was in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it might have been. I was just an idiot and didn't realize it was there. Because you get lost in stuff. But I enjoy the job, and I really enjoy working with the honor board.
What has changed in how you approach being dean of students and faculty advisor to the honor board between last year and this year?
In terms of just being dean of students, last year was tough because a lot of students and faculty were accustomed to the way Dean Markinson did stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not she did anything wrong. I was just different.
Yeah.
And so there was some growth there for both sides. I had to understand the way things would happen.
Mm-hmm.
And at times I responded with the way I would do things, and that wasn't necessarily the culture of the school. So that was challenging at times, and vice versa. One shift is understanding really what my role can be
Mm-hmm.
and should be. In terms of working with the honor board, last year I went into it blind, and I really had no idea what to expect. I hope this year I've given you guys more freedom in saying what you can do, because I think you guys deserve that. I think last year I was trying to figure it out, and in doing so, probably either doing too much or not doing enough.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just winging it. I've been really impressed with what you guys have done. I was really impressed last year with the discussions we had based on just those swooping games we created, and then those, I can't remember who it was, but they spoke to the board of trustees, so I'm really impressed with that. But in terms of how it's changed, I think it's just, I've been able to anticipate things better.
Mm-hmm.
I've been able, people understand where I'm coming from sometimes.
Yeah.
Prior to you say something. Yeah. It's not a great answer. I really don't think it's a great answer, but it's my answer.
So over the years, we've had handling lecture series speakers, student faculty speakers, and whatnot. And Hudson Taylor as another example.
Yeah.
What have been some of your favorite moments from those speakers, and what do you think are some of the big takeaways as a community?
Dr. Wolpe this year was amazing, just because he posed so much
Mm-hmm.
that there was no answer to. The dialogue it generated for the next week was fantastic. And whether it was in the hallways, whether it was in future classes, or whether it was
Mm-hmm.
the lunch we had with peer leadership, it was fantastic. I wish I knew more about the Haley lecture series when I was first here to understand what the purpose is. Because when we had Jessica come, I just kind of started to figure out what she was talking about.
Yeah.
Right? And her story, her experience was, I think, fantastic, and what she had to deal with as a chairperson down the board. And I was still learning the complexities of that case.
Mm-hmm.
But that was, so, sitting back on it, thinking about how much trust was placed in that group. It was amazing. I thought that was a huge takeaway. I thought Ms. Singer's comments in terms of her addressing the student body last year, although not eye-opening to me because I'm a teacher and I agree with everything she said, but I think it opened up a lot of eyes to where teachers come from.
Mm-hmm.
I think that was important. I thought Ellen's point this year was really well taken.
Yeah.
Possibly violating something because you care so desperately about someone.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really important because that's where we find ourselves a lot. Is a friend or a loved one asks us to do something you know isn't correct, and how do you say no, or should you say no? That's a tough one to understand and to come to grips with. But each one of those, I think, stands out to me. Each one had a different message. Wolpe's message was, guess what? There's no right answer.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. But I think that the fact that different people are bringing humanity to and a face to an ideal, I think is important. And you can kind of say, that's where they're coming from. I think that's really important.
In terms of also just discussing ethics and morality, are there things you want to see the honor board doing? We've done the Scruples game. We have a Facebook page. We have a new web page on the pingry.org.
Yeah. I would love to see us find a way to get involved in the lower end of the school.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a logistical challenge because scheduling
Certainly.
and locations. But I think that would be very good. That's my short answer. My long answer, it'd be great. If I were produced like a discussion question every month, but I think that's unrealistic.
Mm-hmm.
And unfair to advisor too, because sometimes advisors have to use the time to focus on other things, or sometimes just press. To always to know that you're always going to have to discuss this. I think that's one of the nice. It can be one of the nice parts is the honor code is present, but it's not overbearing.
Mm-hmm.
The school I came from, and this is what I really appreciated about the school, it's a parochial Catholic school.
Right.
And although it was present, and all freshmen, sophomores had to take a religion requirement, it wasn't necessarily the Catholic canon, the Catholic canon. It wasn't that. It was exploring religions in general. It was exploring genocide based on religion. It was exploring some of the basic tenets of this class. It was a Benedictine school, so the Benedictine values, which, if taken in a secular tone, it just makes sense.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated the fact that it wasn't overbearing. It was there. He knew it was there. And I was baptized Catholic, and that was, aside from my wedding, that's probably the last time I was in church. That was nice for me because I'm not a huge follower of religion. So I was concerned when I was in Milton Answer, and I found it quite refreshing actually to be able to just experience like the ideals of what something could be. I think that very similar in the way that honor code approach here. It's there, it's present, you're reminded of it, but you aren't told consistently be honorable, make the right decision. It's just you trust the fact that you're going to do it. Here's some reminders at times, just because it's a valuable lesson to be brought up again. I'm just finishing applications to the for next year's junior class honor board and the ideas that they may have for how to do something like that are interesting too. So, but again, sometimes it's finding a balance.
What are some of your favorite parts of the honor code? Or maybe
what do you mean by that, like words?
It could be words, or how you see the honor code manifesting itself at Pingry.
I think when people do report stuff, I think that's incredibly rewarding. People are, and they may just not know what to do with it. I think I saw this, right? But at least they're saying this is a personal conflict I'm having. I need to tell someone. The conversation I had with faculty, in a very similar manner, I think this happened. What should be done? And I always prefer faculty to have that conversation with the student face to face first, because sometimes it's just oops, or I didn't do that, and it can be resolved there. Other times, obviously, if the faculty self-faces out or a violation comes to that, or is unsure. The acceptable use policy is the hardest one, because we're not a school that enforces the honor code 24/7. You go
Right.
home, you can do what you want. But when people start using digital communications or social media, and sometimes it turns negative, that can have, even though they did it on a Saturday afternoon at 2 o'clock, it can have an impact on someone on Monday. So trying to find a balance of what is acceptable use as it relates to our community, because because acceptable use is a 24/7 thing.
Yeah.
Behavior in the halls is not. So finding that balance can be tough. That's a challenge. So I'm trying to work through that.
Where do you see the honor code going in the future, and maybe what you see in the future of Pingry? Are there things you hope for?
I think it depends on what the future holds. Right? If we as a community, a country outside these walls, continues to at least seem as divisive as it can be, I would hope the honor code now board continues to play a significant role here, because I think it is valuable for all opinions to be heard and valued. And I think that's fundamentally what honor code is. It's valuing others and treating them with respect.
Yeah.
It really depends on where it goes. So I wanted to see him have a greater presence there, so obviously I'd love to. 14 or so members who serve on the honor board, they also have a life. They have work to do, so we ask a lot of them, right? We ask a lot of you to do everything you do, to do the work you have to do here, to participate in sports or drama. I mean, to ask someone to do more if they're in the drama in the middle of February is like trying to squeeze blood out of a stone. They're going nonstop. So I think there needs to be balance. I would like to do simply what the students feel is important. I think should drive the honor code.
Is there advice that you would like to leave for those listening, or younger students, and that may or may not pertain to the future? You've mentioned things like students being the driving force, knowing how to behave.
This is my own motto or mantra, and it's sitting behind me. I started saying when I was coaching, really, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, but really it's come to something that I really believe is that everything matters. Everything that you do matters. And what that means is a casual comment matters to someone. It matters. Even if it's a negative comment, even that person doesn't care, it says something about you, if you don't understand that. And I say, it's fine to say those things, not fine to say those things, but if you say those things and realize you made a mistake, that's where it's important. So realizing that you can't just blow off a casual comment.
Yeah.
Your interactions with someone in a hall matter. The way you treat each other at all times matter. It kind of comes down to a level of respect and trust. And that can only happen if it matters to you that what you project or represent is that really who you are. Right? So if I'm giving advice to a kid who's going to start school here in September, I'd say remember when you walk on here, the first impression you have is the most important impression you have. So realize that everything you do that first day is going to matter tremendously. but that can be changed immediately.
Mm-hmm.
That's good, right? Realize that the work you do, the work you put in to your academics matters tremendously, not because we grade you yet, because of it says the amount of work and how diligent you are about trying to do your best. And sometimes there's gotta be give. I have
Yeah.
you have an AP U.S. history final today. As a teacher, I don't think I'd be expecting you to do any work this week.
Mm-hmm.
That's a stressful time.
Yeah.
But learn how to balance that, but also
Mhm.
being upfront.
Yeah. All right. Well, I have no more questions, but thank you again, Mr. Ross, and
pleasure.
it's been a pleasure. Mr. Ross, class of 1996, and Dean of Students. Mr. Ross, thank you again so much.
Thanks, Sean.
Hi, it's Sean again. Thank you for listening to the first episode of Morally Sound. Stay tuned for the next episode with new guests.